Have you ever wondered what made one man's voice echo across America for over 50 years? What made his words a source of comfort, wisdom, and every now and then, a twist so unexpected it left you smiling? Today, dear listeners, we discover the man behind the voice, the man who told the stories behind every story. Yes, the voice was unmistakable, and the name, Paul Harvey. And now, you'll hear the rest of his story. It's 1918, and in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a boy is born. His name, Paul Harvey Orant. Paul Harvey's parents played a significant role in shaping his early life, particularly his mother. His father, Harry Orant, was a Tulsa police officer, but tragically, he was murdered in 1921 when Paul was just 3 years old. Harry Orant had been responding to a robbery when he was fatally shot, leaving a profound impact on Paul's life. After the loss of his father, Paul was raised by his mother, Anna Dagmar Orant. She was a strong, independent woman who worked as a teacher to support her family. Anna's resilience and determination were critical in Paul's upbringing, and she instilled in him a strong work ethic and a sense of discipline. Her influence was evident in Paul's later years as he frequently spoke about values like responsibility, integrity, and perseverance, principles that were likely rooted in the guidance his mother provided. Although Paul lost his father at a young age, the strength of his mother's character and her ability to raise him in such challenging circumstances clearly helped mold him into the disciplined and insightful storyteller that he became. Anna's nurturing and stability allowed Paul to focus on his education and early passion for radio, setting him on the path that would make him a broadcasting legend. Now, you might expect him to grow up playing with the neighborhood kids, chasing after dreams of being a doctor or a lawyer. But Paul? He had something different in mind. His fascination with radio came early. By the time he was a teenager, he wasn't just listening to radio, he was working in it. While other high school students were focused on their studies or sports, young Paul found himself inside a local Tulsa radio station, crafting his voice, honing his skills. His early passion for broadcasting wasn't just a hobby, it was a calling. And when he sat behind that microphone for the first time, the world outside may have been small, but Paul Harvey knew that radio could make it much bigger. Now, in the 1950s, radio was already a powerful medium, but it was mostly filled with dry, factual reports and monotone deliveries. Not exactly the stuff that would keep you glued to your chair. And that's where Paul Harvey stood apart. You see, he understood that people didn't just want information, they wanted a story, something with meaning. And that's exactly what he gave them. His broadcasts weren't like the others. They were short, punchy, and always left you wanting more. "Good morning, Americans," he'd say. "This is Paul Harvey." And with those words, you knew something important was coming, something you wouldn't hear anywhere else. But there was one thing that made Paul Harvey stand out more than anything else. It wasn't just the news, it was the way he told it. You see, Paul had a signature segment that captured the attention of millions. It was called The Rest of the Story. Now, in these segments, Paul would begin with what seemed like an ordinary story. It could be about a famous figure, a historic event, or even an unknown individual. But just as you thought you had it all figured out, Paul would twist the narrative. There was always a surprise ending, an unexpected twist. And by the time you reached the end, you'd realize you were learning something entirely different than what you first thought. Take, for example, the story of a struggling artist, a man who couldn't sell his work and was barely scraping by. The world seemed indifferent to his talent, and yet he kept painting. Day after day, he painted. And one day, his work finally caught the eye of someone important. His name? Walt Disney. or the tale of a shy young boy from a small town, so quiet that no one expected him to go far. He didn't stand out in school, wasn't the best athlete, and certainly didn't have the charisma of a born leader. But when he picked up a guitar, well, the world listened. His name? Elvis Presley. It wasn't just the stories themselves, you see. It was Paul's delivery. With every sentence, he drew you in, making you wonder what was coming next. You hung on every word, because with Paul Harvey, there was always something more, something unexpected. And that's why millions of listeners tuned in day after day to hear the rest of the story. Paul Harvey didn't just change the way we listened to the news. He changed the way we understood it. His broadcasts became more than just a way to stay informed. They became a reflection of the country itself. In an era where television was beginning to dominate, Paul Harvey's radio show was proof that a simple voice, telling stories, could still capture the heart of a nation. Through his words, he shaped the way America saw itself. He reflected the values, the hopes, the fears of mid-20th century America. And his commentaries? Well, they weren't just opinions, they were observations about life, about what was right and wrong, about where we were going as a country. But Paul Harvey was never preachy. He didn't tell you what to think. He simply offered a perspective that resonated with millions. He was, in many ways, the moral compass of a generation. And in doing so, he became one of the most influential voices in American history. By the time Paul Harvey retired in 2008, his voice had been a fixture in American life for more than 50 years. He had weathered wars, elections, social upheavals, and technological changes. And yet, through it all, his voice remained as steady and reassuring as ever. When he passed in 2009, the world didn't just lose a broadcaster. It lost a storyteller. A man who understood that the news wasn't just about facts and figures, it was about people, about the stories that made us who we are. But Paul Harvey's legacy didn't end there. You see, his influence can still be felt today. In the world of podcasts, where voices like his continue to inspire, where stories continue to be told with that same blend of suspense, insight, and, yes, a little surprise. His voice may have gone quiet, but the lessons he taught about storytelling, well, they still echo. Paul Harvey was more than a broadcaster. He was a storyteller in the truest sense of the word. His voice may no longer fill the airwaves, but his legacy, oh his legacy, will always remain. Because in every good story, there is a truth. And Paul Harvey, well, he was always after the truth. The world could use a little Paul Harvey today. And now you know the rest of the story. Good day. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this.